When we talk about critical incidents, we break these down into mass casualty incidents, traumatic injuries or death of a child, NVA caused by EMS personnel, serious injury or death of a coworker. These are going to be critical incidences that you may or may not be exposed to, but this is just to kind of keep an open mind that when we talk about critical incidents, these are the areas that we're talking about. These are very difficult and stressful calls to go on. I can't say that I have been on every single one. I don't know that I have been personally on a mass casualty incident. I have done lots of training on them, but I don't know that I've particularly been on one of those. But that's going to be a very stressful type event. I have, in fact, been exposed to a traumatic injury or a death of a child, and that is something that's very difficult. And then those last two, those are also very difficult to sort of deal with. And so we sort of categorize this into more critical incidents in those particular categories. When we are dealing with critical instances, we found kind of over the years that we as EMS professionals and pre-hospital care providers and firefighters and police officers and nurses, we do a terrible job at reacting to these situations because of the added stress these particular calls kind of have within them. And so there was a system that was developed called the Critical Incident Stress Management. This was developed in the 1980s. And this was really designed to help EMS personnel and first responders and police officers and that sort of thing respond appropriately to these critical instances. Now, this doesn't mean the actual response of showing up there and doing this. This is strictly kind of after the call is over, sort of how do we deal with this and how do we sort of work through this. In this particular management style system, there are trained peers and mental health professionals that help the EMS providers kind of get through the stress and the recall of the call. Sometimes these calls don't go exactly as we would have liked to plan them because, again, we're showing up and being called on this chaos, and our job is to sit there and organize it. And sometimes we don't organize it all that well due to the fact that it's just a difficult situation and we do the best that we can. And so afterwards, we may have to go through a process where we interact with this particular system in order to kind of help us get through the call. The components of this CISM system is there's going to be this pre-incident stress education. And basically, this is going to be kind of a sort of education about, what happened before the call, how did the call come out, and then, we're going to have available to us potentially in that particular situation this on-scene peer support system. This is going to be, your peers that you work with, that you feel comfortable with interacting, that are going to be there to sort of provide support for you to kind of give you some feedback of like, hey man, you did a really good job, or I think you really did a good job on that, and that was just a tough call. And then not to mention, we're also going to have available to us potentially some one-on-one support. This might be through some of our peers, but this also might be a particular situation where you have counselors that are contracted or that maybe are part of your system that are going to be able to provide you one-on-one support to help you get through that. Because what we found is that these situations are pretty difficult to deal with. And then last but not least, the other two things are disaster support services and then also diffusing, sort of kind of putting to rest maybe some added anxieties about how you think the call should have gone or how you could have done better and that sort of thing. In this particular system, you're going to have follow-up services where they might, provide, sort of kind of interaction with you after the call just to make sure that you're okay. Because sometimes this isn't something that we like to just kind of share. It's something we're kind of guarded with, it's kind of, when you're kind of interacting in this type environment, a lot of people like to carry themselves like, well, I got it together, and I know what I'm doing, and I don't need your help. And some of us kind of fear that might show a sense of weakness. And so this might be assistance following up with you to kind of see if, okay, I understand you're kind of putting up a wall here. Is there something going on? In addition to that, family and spouse support. What we found, especially in the military environment, but also in the EMS realm, is that, when we're dealing with these kind of stressful situations, sometimes we take this out on our family, and that's not okay. And so, there might be some resources available to help your family. And then also community outreach programs. Those are also helpful things that are part of this system and design. And depending upon the system that you're in and wherever you go and work, they may or may not have a formal structure in place. But most of your 911 systems or your large systems across the country are going to have some realm or some form of this. And then last but not least, a wellness program. Wellness programs are something that I think are very, very important to have in this kind of system, because what we found is that we do a really good job at doing a lot of good studying on medicine and how do we take care of people and how do we interact with people and what's the best thing that we should do. But we do a poor job at taking care of ourselves. And remember, like I stated at the beginning of this lecture, we need to take care of ourselves first and foremost.